I mean, that would be great if Luke got hung up in TSA.
Yeah, everyone's still carrying their swords.
Yeah, right. Sir? What's good? Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of The Newest Olympian. My name is Mike Schubert. I'm the titular Newest Olympian. I'm a 30-year-old man who never read the Percy Jackson books as a kid, but I'm reading them now as an adult on a quest to determine if this is a book series that we've all been sleeping on. And I'm not on this quest alone, though. I am joined by someone that I've wanted on the show for a while. We had some hiccups, but we're making it work. It is Ashlee Latimer, who ran the social media for the Lightning Thief musical. And now she goes on to run the social media for Rick Riordan. And she's also an author of Francis Discovers Possible. Ashlee, how's it going?
It's going well. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for being on the show. I'm very glad to have you here. Clearly, Twitter was very happy about this happening when you eyeball emoji hyped it up a couple of days ago. So it's the crossover event we've all been looking forward to. By we, I mean the Percy Jackson fandom that I am just now becoming a baby part of.
This is our multiverse.
Yes, gosh, of course. Now, obviously, you are very ingrained in the Percy Jackson universe. But before we get to that, how did you first come across reading the books?
So actually through my first job on the musical, I had just started working at a theatrical marketing agency in New York and had never read the books and found out that the musical was going to be one of my clients. I also am 30. And so I had just missed the boat because I was already reading a lot of YA. And back then, I don't feel like we were encouraged to continue reading middle grade as much as people are now. So I just missed the books. And when I started working on the show, I was like, oh, these fans are dedicated. And that was basically the only thing I knew. Because when the movies came out, I was going to maybe go see them with my younger brother. And then I heard that they were not good and not faithful to the books. And so we didn't go. And I was like, I cannot work on this show unless I read these books. And so I cleared my entire calendar at work that day and sat down and started on The Lightning Thief right then. And I haven't looked back.
Amazing. That's so fantastic. So you sit down, you read the books, you eventually end up working for the Lightning Thief musical, running all of the social media. Now, I am not fully ingrained in the PJA universe yet. I am learning. But from what I have heard, apparently you did a very good job with this. Can you, in a non-spoilery way, talk about why people said, oh, she did such a good job? And obviously you did a good job if Rick hired you to run all of his stuff.
Yeah. So I also had to do my best to avoid spoilers while also still demonstrating that, like, I knew the world and knew what I was talking about. And I think that really that just showed to the fans that this wasn't a situation where it was another team that like hadn't read the books. And even though several of the other creative team members and the cast were also on social media, I think the show's social media accounts really became the mouthpiece for demonstrating how dedicated everybody behind the scenes is to the books. And I have worked with children and families since I was in high school. And I worked at a children's theater for like 10 years before starting work on the show. And so I was used to relating to kids. Like I had been a teacher and a director. And so I knew a lot of like the other pop culture that they were also into. And I folded a lot of that into our social media. And so I think it just became this space where the fans could really be themselves. They could trust that we cared about the books. And they also could like get connections. Like one time I did a thread of Lizzo as Greek gods and goddesses. And
amazing.
And so they were just like all the other things that they were into got pulled in. We went viral on K-pop Twitter a couple of times because BTS has a song called Dionysus. And so
it's a very good song too.
And so, yeah, so it just like really, even though I didn't read the books until starting on this specific journey, I've really had like 10 years of buildup prior to that to prepare for this role.
That is so cool. So you go from there. Now you are running Rick Riordan's social media. I'm sure that is already a stressful endeavor, only made more stressful by the recent stuff going on with the casting. And obviously, if you are not allowed to talk about any Disney thing, I don't blame you. I do not want to summon the mouse upon your house.
Sure.
But how has it been running Rick's stuff? Someone who is famously not on social media now and just makes blog posts where he, talks about, hey, I had nothing to do with the movies, or yelling at people for being racist.
Yeah. So it's a delicate balance because on the one hand, we want my voice on Rick's socials to be in line with his brand. On the other, it can't be too authentic because we want people to know that it's me and not him. And that definitely has been a challenge. Most people, especially when you have a platform that large, they're not on social media every minute of every day. And so there's still lots of people who don't realize that it's not Rick running his social media anymore. And that definitely has gotten a bit better in the past few months. Ironically, the TV show news has helped because I've been commenting more on that on my personal accounts as well. So people have started to make the connection between my own personal accounts and that's me running Rick's accounts as well. Mm-hmm. Whereas before, when it was a lot of book news, there wasn't necessarily controversy with those for me to talk about or to update people on with my own lens and viewpoint. So the majority of my Riordanverse content was just me creating for his account. And now that there's a little bit more coming from both sides, people are making that. But yeah, I would say that's the biggest connection, is maintaining the brand while also making it clear that it's not Rick himself, especially for news outlets, because sometimes they'll be like, Rick said this. And it's like, no, in the tweet, it says, I, parentheses, Ashlee, think this about this book. But it's, as always, been, yes, it is very high stakes. This fandom is very dedicated. They're very involved. But as always, it has also been really, really fun. And Rick and Becky are just the best. And so is everyone else who works on Rick's team.
They all seem like wonderful people. And I have to say, it's very brave of you, the team, etc., because on Rick's Twitter page, at least, very clearly in his bio, it states, Rick does not do this. The tweets are by Ashlee, and they tag your Twitter account, which for me, coming from a lot of social media accounts run by sports teams and stuff, where they never publicly say who runs the accounts because sometimes fans harass that person if they tweet something they don't like. Power to you for making it very public. Hello, if you're angry about a tweet, here's where you can direct your anger towards.
Yeah, and that definitely has had an impact on my life.
Oh,
but
no.
Luckily, the pros have outweighed the cons for sure. And I think if it were a different fandom, not to name any names, I maybe would have been a little more apprehensive to be so public. But while any large group of people has its bad apples, this fandom is so unique in that, for the most part, everyone is really wonderful.
Yeah.
So yeah, I also got like 3 or 4 years of being anonymous before going public. So that helped.
That's good. Well, that's nice. Well, this has been fun. I'm glad that you were able to share some of this before we get into the chapters we're here to discuss, which is chapters 16 and 17 of The Sea of Monsters. Let's get right into chapter 16, which is called I Go Down with the Ship. Now, on this podcast, I try to guess in my notes before reading the chapter. I try to guess what will happen next. So I didn't know exactly what was going to happen, but with the title being I Go Down with the Ship, I know that he wouldn't be putting his hands up and surrendering, and there's not going to be any white flag on his door because he's in love and he always will be. My actual guess, though, is that Percy is going to use his water powers to turn the Queen Anne's Revenge into some sort of submarine, and the going down with the ship would be going underwater. That's a fun guess that aged super well.
That's giving very Daughter of the Deep vibes.
I've seen that book exists. I'll get to that in 8 years on a future episode. So the opening line from Percy here is great because where we last left our heroes, Polyphemus had come running down the beach with a boulder in each hand, and Percy says, quote, "You'd think he'd run out of rocks," which is great. Where is he getting all of the rocks? There's so many rocks.
Right. Yeah, I feel like this has really changed just rereading it. I had kind of forgotten how rocky this island is supposed to be.
He feels like a video game boss that just keeps throwing something at you and they materialize out of nothing. Just, this guy has infinite boulders to throw at me. So our team begins swimming away towards the boat. Polyphemus calls Tyson a traitor against his kind, and Tyson says, "I am not a traitor." Polyphemus says that he is because he serves thieving humans and then throws a boulder. And then Tyson, in the best reply possible, smacks it aside and says, "Not a traitor, and you are not my kind." Amazing. I don't know how. Every single time Tyson does something, he gets better. He's already max the best, and he keeps outdoing himself. Tyson's so impressive.
He's so great. I love him so much, and I just remember feeling so heartbroken and stressed when I thought that he was gone the first time, and then reliving that all over again and knowing that so many great moments are coming for him was so exciting. I feel like so much of this book to me feels like it is about, what does it mean to be the child of your parents? Yeah. And I feel like Tyson challenges so many ideas of what you're born with versus what you decide to do with that.
Yeah, that's a really good point to make. In a previous episode, we talked about how a big theme of the book is pushing back against first impressions or what people would assume from you. So that goes along really well with that. I think that makes a lot of sense. So Clarice, Grover, and Annabeth are just about to make it to the ship. Percy knows that they'll be safe if he can distract Polyphemus just a bit longer. And Tyson is on the same page saying, quote, "Go, I will hold Big Ugly," which I like that this has become Polyphemus's official name.
Yes.
Percy says, no, we should do it together. And Tyson agrees. Love this. Teamwork makes the dream work. Polyphemus is limping, but his arms are fine, and he throws boulder number 2, and Tyson again punches it into rubble. Pretty good defense system, Tyson, here. Percy then uses his water powers to cause the sea to rise, and a 20-foot wave pushes Percy towards Polyphemus. Percy then kicks him in the eye and jumps over his head as the water pushes Polyphemus onto shore. Polyphemus then calls Percy a fleece stealer, and Percy points out, well, you stole it too, so you're not any better than me. Polyphemus's defense is that satyrs are good eating, so who cares if I've stolen the fleece, which, okay, I mean, you're not wrong, but come on. Percy says that it should be used to heal, and that it belongs to the children of the gods. And Polyphemus says that he is also a child of the gods and calls for Poseidon to curse PJ. But Percy informs him that Poseidon is also his dad, and Poseidon's not going to play favorites, so this curse is not going to do anything.
It's fascinating to me that, Polyphemus doesn't realize that Percy is also a son of Poseidon, which, I guess we're so used to being in the space where it's everybody knows about Percy now. But of course, Polyphemus is out on this island where he hasn't gotten a news update since the Odyssey. But I really do love this moment because in some ways, Polyphemus reminds me of Luke here in this idea of this technically a demigod who isn't fitting in with what we think a demigod should be. And now this is just another moment where Polyphemus is going to go unseen by his dad simply because he's fighting against his brother, which may be for the best because I can't imagine Poseidon choosing Polyphemus in this moment over Percy.
No, not at all.
But, I'm not sure if Polyphemus would agree with me. So
I liked this moment too because we'll see in a little bit that Polyphemus does his tricksiness again. And given that he did it earlier, we wouldn't think that maybe Polyphemus would be worth saving. But by bringing this up, I was reminded and the reader was reminded, oh, right, he's just like Tyson. And then you think, well, I like Tyson, so is it fair if I just completely write off Polyphemus just because he's mean? So it's a really good writing note from Rick here to make you kind of second guess. Maybe he is salvageable. Maybe we can, I can fix him energy kind of thing. So Polyphemus rips out an olive tree, and he's smacking it around at the sound of Percy's voice trying to hit him. And Percy continues to talk smack to try to keep Polyphemus focused on him. Tyson then sneaks around the back, but when he does, Polyphemus then starts to pull this trick on Tyson by asking for help from his fellow Cyclops. Tyson begins to say, quote, "Don't fight, Cyclops brother. Put down the..." But then Polyphemus whacks the crap out of Tyson with a literal tree, which feels painful. Narrator Percy says, quote, "The tree struck him with such force, it would have flattened me into a Percy pizza with extra olives." And mwah, chef's kiss.
Yes.
Great wording. And I am one of the few people who really likes an olive pizza, specifically a black olive pizza. So I think this is a great turn of phrase, and it also made me very hungry.
Same. I also love olives on my pizza. Well, I guess when it's in a Supreme pizza. I don't know if I would eat just olives.
Olives and Supreme, I think, are very good. I am potentially a monster that I would just eat a straight olive pizza. I think black olives on pizza are delicious. So Polyphemus then charges at Tyson, but Percy chases after and is able to stab him. And I think he stabs him in the butt because Percy says, quote, "I'd hoped to sting Polyphemus in the back of the thigh, but I managed to leap a bit higher." Does this mean he stabbed Polyphemus in the butt?
That's what I've always interpreted as, that it's like
okay,
kind of a euphemistic way of, of saying that.
That's what I figured. I figured Rick was writing, okay, stab him in the butt without saying stab him in the butt. And I appreciate that Rick does this throughout the book of sometimes writing things in a way where the kids might not get it, but the older readers would, kind of your classic Pixar joke of writing.
Right.
But I mean, 12-year-olds would eat this up if you say stabs him in the butt.
For sure.
Yeah, that's the prime audience. Why not just say it?
Yeah, I feel like that's one of those moments where it's kind of balancing that so perfectly, because I feel like they would eat it up and also they would forget the entire stakes of this battle that we have going on.
That's true. I was going to add this to my list of very serious questions to ask Rick Riordan if I ever interview him, but maybe we've already answered it, so I can just cross that one off and have 1004 very important questions. So Polyphemus then hits Percy with the tree, and it, of course, hurts because he got hit with a tree. Polyphemus goes for a second hit, but Percy grabs a branch of it, and as he does, he uses the force of the swing to get propelled into the air, and he then lands on Polyphemus's eye with both feet, and that allows Tyson to tackle Polyphemus to the ground. And I don't think you have directorial say in the Disney Plus show, but this felt like the most anime thing possible. And I was just imagining, the swooshing diagonal lines and zoom in and out and slow-mo and lens flare as he's in the air. The action scene possibilities for this. Ooh, yes. Enticing.
And this is just another great Rick skill of like perfectly balancing the action with this really wonderful character moment, because now we have the two brothers absolutely taking this enemy down, and I love it so much.
It's really great. Previously, we had Percy and Clarice having amazing teamwork, which is fun because they were rivals previously. Now we have Tyson and Percy working together very much on the same page and in love with each other, as opposed to when it was the dodgeball game and Percy didn't really fully appreciate Tyson yet.
Yeah.
So it's nice to see them working together again well.
Yes.
Now, Percy is in a position where he can take a jab at Polyphemus's heart, but it just doesn't feel right. Tyson then shoves Polyphemus away instead, and they head for the water. So things are going pretty well, and then Clarice, in classic Clarice fashion, blows everything up. It starts out kind of sweet. She starts hyping up Percy, and Polyphemus then throws a rock towards them and misses short. She then taunts his bad throw, which allows him to throw another one, knowing that they are a bit farther, and it connects with the ship. And I was just, as you were on the recording here, just big two-handed facepalm. Clarice, come on.
I know. And it's so tricky because, like, you would think that this would be a great moment for Clarice. Like, she is seeing Percy as a worthy member of the offense and trying to cheer him on. And it's just the worst choice she could have made in that moment. Mm-hmm. It always makes me wonder of, like, I feel like it's setting good groundwork for exploring her fatal flaw, which of course is another big part of this section of the book.
Yeah, I don't know if I have hers pegged quite yet, but I would guess pride would be the thought, because she always either wants credit or wants to do things by herself, or if she can have the opportunity to make fun of someone and make herself look better, I guess that would be my potential guess. We'll see if that gets explicitly discussed either later in this book in the future. Now, narrator Percy says, quote, "You wouldn't believe how fast a ship can sink." And I said out loud while reading my book, "Oh no!" He goes on and says, "Not many people realize that when a ship goes down, it acts like a sinkhole, pulling down everything around it. Clarice was a strong swimmer, but even she wasn't making any progress. Grover frantically kicked with his hooves. Annabeth was hanging onto the fleece, which flashed in the water like a wave of new pennies." A wave of new pennies. I never would have predicted that as a way to say a shiny thing, but I guess that's why Rick's the professional author. Percy dives in after them. He's very worried, and he thinks to himself, we need help. And then he hears Tyson's voice clearly in his head say, yes. So they've got mind underwater telepathic powers, which is very cool. And once Tyson said yes, I thought, oh man, wouldn't it be really cool if Rainbow comes back? And then Rainbow comes back and my sweet, sweet Rainbow. When Rainbow got introduced, I thought, all right, either this is the coolest one-off character of all time, or Rainbow's going to come back and be truly beloved. And to have Rainbow back in the mix, I'm really happy. Excited. I'm very satisfied.
Yes, I was also so excited. I get excited every time to see Rainbow come back. I feel like that's just another of Rick's strengths is like, no matter how many times you read it, you go through the whole emotional experience all over again.
Mm-hmm. And enough wild stuff happens in between that you forget about Rainbow's existence. So It's nice. Rainbow comes in. This is the third instance of Rainbow. And it's the second time that when Rainbow returned, up until it became very obvious, I was forgetting the coolest hippocampus in the world. So they call for Rainbow together, and then all three of the hippocampi arrive. Rainbow grabs Clarice and Tyson, and then one of the friends grabs Annabeth and Percy, and the last grabs Grover. And I love that the other two are not even named, because no name will beat Rainbow, so the other two are just Rainbow's friends.
Friend one and friend two.
Mm-hmm. So they break the surface, and Polyphemus is boasting that he finally sank nobody. Percy thinks to himself that he hopes Polyphemus never realizes that he was wrong, and I was so relieved because I was worried that either Percy or Clarice would not be able to stand the fact that someone incorrectly thought that they had bested them. So the fact that both of them stay quiet, big sigh of relief here.
Absolutely.
Annabeth, understandably, falls asleep. Percy very sweetly adjusts her position to make sure that she's okay. And then he remembers that he owes the gods a debt. Is this because he just prayed to them saying, if we get out of this, I'll owe you something?
Yeah. When she's like first in danger, he says, if Annabeth's plan works, I will tell her she's a genius. And he's worried that the plan won't work, but he's also worried because he knows the gods will hold him to it if it does work.
Got it. Well, we'll see what sort of cleaning duty Mr. D has him do around Camp Half-Blood in the beginning of book 3. But Percy, following up on the previous promise, whispers to Annabeth that she's a genius, which I first thought was really sweet. And then in retrospect, I thought, did he just do this because she can't hear him?
I know. I feel like both of them are just the queen and king of saying things that they feel when the other can't hear it.
As someone who's really hoping that they get together, I am fine with them sharing this trait. They're just a great match, and we'll just have to see if they end up together. I do not know, but I'm heavily invested in Percabeth.
I hope that for you, too.
Thank you. So Percy then falls asleep. He doesn't know where they're going, and he doesn't know how far the hippocampi can take them, but he doesn't really care. And that's the end of chapter 16, and now we will take a little bit of a break here for the Sea of Sponsors. As the hippocampi swim them through the Sea of Monsters, we're going to go to the Sea of Sponsors to talk about some fun stuff. People supporting the show. I got sponsored by a sourdough bread company. Things are good. Hello and welcome to the Sea of Sponsors. Before we get into the fun stuff, I wanted to talk about something that I should have included in the last episode, but it got lost in the shuffle with me traveling and everything. Given everything that's been going on in America recently around gun violence, especially the tragedy that happened in Uvalde, I took all the ad money from our last episode and I donated it to Everytown for Gun Safety. It's a nonprofit organization that advocates for gun control, and they advocate against gun violence, from policy to awareness, anything that they can do to try and fix the terrible gun situation that is going on in this country. If you want to donate to them as well, you can go to everytown.org. They also helped out with March for Our Lives, which just took place on June 11th. And if you want to help out in a non-monetary way, call your senators. There have been multiple pieces of legislation passed in the House that can be voted on in the Senate. So find out who your senator is and call them and tell them that it's important. It's what I'm going to do. You can email them, you can write to them, you can call them. Just let them know that this has to change. It absolutely must. And it's just terrible, and it happens all the time, and I'm sick of it, and it has to change this time. So please, I would urge you, if you live in the States, find out who your senator is, give them a call, and tell them that we got to change this. We absolutely have to. And now let's get into some more fun announcements. I'm very excited to announce that we officially are doing the TNO live show in New York City. It is the first live show that we have ever done for the newest Olympian, and I'm so excited that we get to do it in the city where Olympus is located and where the books take place, and also where I live. It's really nice. I could just walk to the venue, but also the venue is on a pier over the water. It's a very thematic live show, and I would absolutely love, if you live in the New York City area, if you would would attend. It's on August 24th, and this show is the test run of a potential The Newest Olympian tour. So if this one does well in terms of ticket sales, there's a very good chance we can make more of these shows happen across the country and hopefully the globe. But yes, if you go to thenewestolympian.com/live, you can get tickets right now. I really, really, really want this thing to do well. So if you live in the area and you're free on that day, I would absolutely love to see your face there. I'm talking with some folks about the possibility of live streaming the show. I do not know if that is possible, but if we can get it streamed and get some stream tickets up, I will be sure to announce it. But yes, we are doing our first ever TNO live show in New York City on August 24th. Now, let's say you don't live in/near New York City, but you still want to see me having a goofy time in a book-related live podcast setting. Well, I've got good news for you, because there are a bunch of Potterless live shows scheduled for the rest of this year. This week, the week this episode comes out, kicks off my Midwest tour. We'll be in Indianapolis, Chicago, Milwaukee, and Minneapolis from the 17th of June through the 21st of June, and that Chicago show will be live streamed. So on June 19th at 1 p.m. Eastern, we're doing a Sunday brunch show, and it will be live streamed. So if you get the internet, you can attend that show. We're also doing shows later in the year in New Jersey, Florida, Missouri, Pennsylvania, Utah, Oregon, and Texas. You can get tickets to all of these shows, including that live stream show, at potterlesspodcast.com/live. So lots of opportunities for live Mike Schubert podcasts in the near future, and you can get tickets to them all now. I also want to thank all of the folks who are supporting the show on Patreon. If you go to thenewestolympian.com/Patreon, you can join the Patreon and get access to a whole bunch of fun stuff. You get physical merch like stickers and pins. You get digital merch like bonus episodes. Just did a bonus episode where I read through Rick Riordan's official FAQ from his website, which is a very spicy FAQ where he throws shade at Chris Columbus for poorly directing the movies. So that's some fun stuff. But I want to thank the newest members of our patron team. So shout out to our newest Super God tier patrons, Ashlee G, Da Cookie, which does have 3 O's in it, and Sarah Ryu. Shout out to our newest God tier patrons, Laura Manning, Catherine Sloan, Amelia Hogg, and Mason and Lissa. Shout out to our newest demigod tier patrons, Nicolette Zena and Savannah, and a name correction for Sarah Elise Arntzen. And shout out to Milo Kim, who upgraded to the Ultra God tier. Thank you all so much for supporting the show. May Hypnos shine upon you in favor, letting you go right to sleep once your head hits the pillow. Also want to thank Multitude for having us as a part of the collective. If you're all caught up on The Newest Olympian, you're caught up on the other shows that I make for Multitude, and you want a new podcast to listen to, why don't you listen to a Multitude podcast? There's a whole bunch of very good Multitude shows out there, and one that I think you'd enjoy is Spirits. Spirits is a history and comedy podcast focused on everything folklore, mythology, and the occult, told through the lens of feminism, queerness, and modern adulthood. They've been doing episodes solely dedicated to figures from Greek mythology, so if you enjoy the Greek mythology elements of the PJO books and TNO episodes, and the Dr. Moya episodes, you're going to love those episodes of Spirits. You also love some of the other episodes of Spirits. I really enjoy the urban legend episodes where they bring in editor Eric Schneider and they talk about wild urban legends that listeners submit, and it's a very fun time. There's a whole bunch of episodes you can listen to. They have over 250 episodes, so if you want a podcast that you can really blitz through an entire back catalog of, Spirits is the podcast for you. You can listen to it by searching for Spirits wherever you get your podcasts or going to spiritspodcast.com. And before we wrap up here, you're going to hear words from a few sponsors who make it feasible for me to be a full-time podcaster. Some of these ads will be read by me, others of them won't. The ones that are not read by me are inserted locally. So if you live in Indianapolis, Indiana, don't be surprised if you hear an ad about, I don't know, the DVD box set of Hoosiers. But once those ads are complete, we will get back to this episode of The Newest Olympian. And we're back, and we're here to discuss chapter 17, which is called We Get a Surprise on Miami Beach. Now, my guess here is that it is somehow New Year's Eve, and Pitbull is arriving on a boat, yes, Mr. 305, for Countdown Feliz 2007. If anyone is unaware, Pitbull, I think for the past 10 years or so, has done a New Year's Eve event in Miami, and I couldn't find video evidence of this, but one of my friends told me that one time he arrived on a boat into the Miami shore to kick off the celebration, and man,
I wouldn't put it past him.
To see Mr. Worldwide singing on a boat, entering his own concert, incredible. So my actual guess here, though, is that Luke is here, and maybe he's here. So my big guess, if for anyone not following recent episodes, I think Thalia is coming back. I don't think she's going to stay as a tree. I feel like she's coming back as a human. My big, huge home run swing guess is that Luke is trying to bring her back in order to get her on his team. The end of this chapter will make that prediction seem very interesting, but at least my guess here when I started this chapter was Luke's going to be here and maybe Thalia is going to be here too. We'll see. So Annabeth shakes Percy awake and he's getting sprayed with salt water, and he sees a skyline filled with neon and palm trees and a bunch of boats in a harbor, so clearly it's in Miami. I also would have loved to note if Uncle Rick went dad joke and said there were also a bunch of people wearing blazers with the sleeves cuffed to mention Miami Vice. Annabeth alerts Percy that the hippocampi are acting strange, and Percy can sense that what they are going through is that there is just too much pollution going on. There's too many humans around, and I feel bad for them. Obviously, pollution is never something you want to see, especially such wonderful creatures deal with. They basically make it clear, we can't swim any farther. We got to go. You guys are on your own. And then they just have to swim to shore.
That's such a devastating little moment, especially thinking about how much worse climate change has gotten since these were first published, and just the idea of that it's causing them physical pain. Because clearly they are such loyal and generous creatures. They would take them if they could, and the fact that they just simply can't is so terrible. It makes me I'm not going to go too far down that.
Yeah,
I mean, end up in a terrible, sad climate change podcast.
Really ahead of the curve, Rick Riordan in 2006, 2007, be writing about this, and it's 2022, and it's only gotten worse, and skepticism has only increased.
Yeah.
So that's super cool to see how things have gone in the past 15 years. Hooray! So they have to swim ashore and leave the hippocampi behind, and that causes Tyson to cry a little bit. And I want to protect Tyson at all costs. I want to protect Rainbow at all costs, and I want to protect Tyson and Rainbow's love and friendship at all costs.
Yeah, that for me, that's what we should be using to market climate activism. Is you have made Rainbow and Tyson cry.
Yes, you can't do that. Tyson hugs Rainbow and he gives Rainbow a parting gift of a soggy mango. And if that's not true friendship, I don't know what is. So the team arrives on shore. Tyson's eye returns to the misty two-eye form since they are around mortals. Grover puts on his cap and his sneakers, and I was very, very excited about this next description from narrator Percy. The fleece had transformed from a sheepskin to a red and gold high school letter jacket with a large glittery omega on the pocket. And look, I know Becky Riordan has laid out some blasting tweets at Disney for not upping the merchandise game. But if Disney wants to sell really cool varsity jackets, it's so obvious.
Especially because that vintage style is really coming back right now. I will push this as a personal agenda with all of the non-existent power that I have on the series. Season 2, Letterman jackets, they're coming.
It's also one of those things where varsity jackets, I remember when I had to get mine in high school, it was very expensive. And you wonder, why is it so expensive? But it's the thing that you have to get, so you get it. And I feel like it's one of those clothing items that if they wanted to make a bunch of money of overhead where you could just charge a multiple $100 price tag, even if it doesn't cost that much to make, it's one of those items that people would digest because, yeah, I don't know how much varsity jackets cost. And also, it's so cool. It's just so cool. People would totally do it. It's a great fashion decision. It's a great business decision. Disney, come on. It's right there.
They're leaving money on the table.
They truly are. So Annabeth runs to a newspaper box, lol, 2007,
Yes.
and sees that it is June 18th, meaning that they've been away from camp for a full 10 days, which they are very surprised about, given that it feels like a lot of time. But when I read this, I thought, yeah, it kind of feels like they've been gone for a week and a half.
Yeah,
so
absolutely. It's never been quite clear to me whether they feel like it should have been longer or shorter. And I'm like, we're traveling by boat, and typically older ones. I just felt like it would have been so much longer, but I guess for the sake of Talia's tree, we obviously don't want it to be.
Yeah. I guess I could go back and count all the times they sleep, but I feel like instinctually they sleep less than 10 times. So maybe that's what they're going for. But they've definitely had 10 days worth of action happen to them. And even that, it's a lot. And for that reason, it makes sense, given that it would be 10 days. And then they admit that monster time works differently, which I think is fun. But it's also just so interesting for me reading this book after not reading a ton of YA novels. But usually I feel like the YA structure is this book takes a year, whether it's a school year or a calendar year. So it's very interesting where the last book was a couple of weeks, and now this book is a week and a half. It's very interesting how different the time length of the story is from the norm, and then even book to book. And I honestly wouldn't be surprised if one of the books has something where, I don't know, Percy yada yada's over an entire school year. Like it picks up in a previous summer, and then Percy goes, anyway, school was boring. It's the next summer. I would not be surprised if that happens in a future book. And I think it's really fun for Rick Riordan to write this series where I genuinely never know what's going to happen next. Whereas when I read Harry Potter, it was like, okay, the bad guy's going to get introduced at the beginning of the year. They're going to spend the whole year trying to figure out what's going on. Then finals are going to happen. Then they'll defeat the bad guy. They'll go home. We've done it. With this, I really have no idea. Like the big fight you could see happening here happened in chapters 15 and 16. There's still 4 or 5 more chapters to go. There could be another fight. This book could end on a cliffhanger. I don't know what's happening. It's fun.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that also works so well with the books, at least to this point. I will make no spoilers, like taking place during summer, because there is, that liminal sense of time moves differently in summer. And also I feel like we all collectively think of summers as this time where it's like anything could happen. We're away from the normal routine of the school year, and a month could flash by and it feels like it's been 2 days, or a month could stretch on and feel like it's so much longer. And you always leave summer changed and expect going into the next summer that like something big will happen. And I feel like this kind of wimbly wombly time works really well with that.
Yes, for sure. And even the wimbly wombly writing of, monster time works different. When I first read YA or middle grade books for a podcast when I did Potterless, I was much more stingent about, oh, come on, I see what J.K. Rowling is doing here. Whereas now it's just, whatever. First book, cell phones don't work, monsters can smell them. Mm-hmm. Yes, of course. Like, I now have not become a curmudgeon where, yes, sometimes you just need the book to work, and I think it's fine. So when, at this point, they're talking about it and they say, oh, monster time works differently, I just said, of course it does. Because it's a book. It's a book.
I love that too. I feel like, and I don't know that this is, happening everywhere by any means, but I am so into books that don't feel like they have to explain every detail of the magic system. I know that in a lot of like classic fantasy, it is so much more rooted in realism. And so it's like, this is how the real world correlates to this thing in the magic world. But I love things that are just like, time works differently here. Magic's happening. Let's go. Mm-hmm. So I just appreciate that.
Yeah. And I think the most important thing is that it's just consistent. And this is something we've seen happen, so it makes sense. And same thing with stuff either not working around monsters or monsters smelling stuff or whatever. It's consistent. And that's all you want. That's what I ran into issues with in some other series, but it's not the case here. And I even like it not in YA or middle grade books. The John Wick franchise, I think, is perfect. It's got just the right amount of, this is just how things work in the John Wick world. His suit's bulletproof, but it looks like a regular suit. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah,
you get the information that you need to have explained, and the other stuff is just vibes. And one of my best friends is super into John Wick, and she talks about how like that's one of the things that pulled her right in. Is she saw the poster and she was like, nothing on here makes sense together, and also I can't wait to dive into it.
Yeah, I think the breakdown where I would fall is that the rules don't need to make sense. There just need to be rules. And if we have rules, they just need to be consistent. And that's what's happening here. And I'm totally fine with it. Time is a question mark in Monster World. Great. Who cares? We don't need to know, every minute in Mortal World is 7 hours in time. Like, we don't need to know any of that stuff where we have a direct ratio. It's fine. Time works differently. Cool. Let's move on. Grover, though, because of this, guesses Thalia's tree is almost dead, probably. So we need to get the fleece there tonight. So I'm feeling better about my guess here. Now, this makes Clarice dejected because she sees no way that they can get to Camp Half-Blood in time. And she starts to blame Percy for interfering. And during this blame game, she says, quote, just like the Oracle said, which really piqued my interests here. And Annabeth then unloads on Clarice for saying that this is Percy's fault, which I think is great. Good friend, supportive Annabeth here. But Percy just squashes this entire argument, which I think was also the right call.
Yeah, definitely. I think we're seeing Percy have a little bit of growth. Typically, he is the one who's getting into the interpersonal arguments, and Annabeth is the focus on the plan, focus on the strategy. I think we're seeing here where they have started to pick up some positive qualities from each other that still balance out because they're evenly swapped here.
Yes, and I would even say that what Annabeth is doing here is justified. So I'm not trying to say that this is a bad thing she's doing, but yeah, I think the good thing that she's picked up from Percy, like you said, is being angry at people when they're rude to your friends, and Percy is picking up hey, there's a task at hand. We should probably take care of it first. Narrator Percy then says, "The thing was, I'd almost forgotten this quest was supposed to be Clarice's. For a scary moment," love that he called this scary, "I saw things from her point of view. How would I feel if a bunch of other heroes had butted in and made me look bad?" And I appreciate Percy being understanding here and putting himself in Clarice's shoes, but this quest is only Clarice's because Tantalus is a jerk, so it's never really felt like her quest to me. It's always, to me, felt like this is Percy's quest that was given to someone else out of spite.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And I think, of course, Tantalus, I imagine, was trying to find another way to cause problems for Percy and between Percy and the other demigods. But it is nice of Percy that he's willing to look at it a little differently.
Now, Percy, and I love this next bit from Percy here, he recalls Clarice's interaction with Ares in the CSS Birmingham, and he feels bad because he doesn't want Clarice to look bad in front of Ares. So he comes up with a plan that makes sense for what they're trying to accomplish and helps Clarice out. So first he asks Clarice, what exactly did the oracle say? And Clarice says, "You shall sail the iron ship with warriors of bone." Check, done, CSS Birmingham. "You shall find what you seek and make it your own." I guess that's just getting the fleece. "But despair for your life entombed within stone." Check, in the cave, not looking good, but it was all right. "And fail without friends to fly home alone." And that's the line where I said, all right, this one hasn't happened yet. Grover feels downtrodden because it mentions failure, but Percy has an idea. He asks if anyone has cash, and Tyson replies, "Do you mean green paper?" What a fun note. And then Percy says, "Yes." And Tyson asks, "Oh, you mean the type that was in the duffel bags?" And Percy goes, "Yes, but we don't have those anymore." And then Tyson has a duffel bag. I'm imagining that happening where Percy gets interrupted mid-sentence of, "Yeah, but we don't have that. Where'd you get those?" It's just so excited that Tyson has the duffel bags.
And I love that moment because it's such a good demonstration of how, in direct opposition to Clarice, who, even when she is trying to do the right thing, often is doing the exact wrong thing, Tyson is so pure that even when he's not trying to do the right thing, he inevitably chooses the choice that will help everyone out in the end.
Tyson is so good that he can't even help but to do the best thing when he doesn't even mean it. He's that wonderful and perfect.
I guess technically he was trying to do a good thing of he thought it was food for Rainbow. So he was prioritizing grabbing that, but definitely on a much smaller scale than let's save the whole quest.
Right. For him to think that it's just a feeding bag for Rainbow is great. And I don't know if Tyson opened the bag and knew exactly what was in there, but I wonder if he thought it was some sort of magical lettuce or something. It was some sort of food, leafy greens to give to them. Tyson pulls out the cash. There's $300 in there. So Percy, this plan is so good. He sends Clarice to the airport to fly home with the fleece. It's all fantastic, but I did wonder, can you buy a ticket with cash at an airport? Could you maybe in 2007? I've never heard of this before.
Because I don't know what the alternative would even be, a personal check?
Yeah, I guess I've just never bought a ticket at the airport before. The closest was I missed a flight once, and then I had to rebuy a ticket, but I just did it on my phone. So I don't know. Maybe they would let you, but do they have cash registers? I don't know if you can do this. I don't know if
this is the moment where I'm like, I needed a Home Alone where Kevin has to go to the airport to answer this question for us.
This question I can add to my very important questions to ask Rick Riordan of, In the mid-2000s, could you show up like a sporting event or a concert and just go to the ticket booth and buy a ticket?
Yeah. I have literally never bought tickets for definitely planes, but maybe anything not online or at least over the phone.
Right. You could definitely do it over the phone, but I guess, I don't know, if you were an international traveler and you had cash and there was nothing else you could do, maybe they have a system for it? I don't know. Very intrigued. Yeah. But I'm sure people will tweet at me the answer. And that's fine, because I am actually genuinely curious about if that was a thing.
Yes, we need Gen X to chime in.
So everybody is shocked, but Percy says, well, I can't fly because of Zeus, but also we can fulfill the prophecy here if you go, Clarice, because if you look at the prophecy, it says you'd fail without friends, meaning you would need our help. You got our help, so you didn't fail, but you'd have to fly home alone. So go fly home. Nice. Perfect. So Clarice takes a little bit of time to make sure this isn't some sort of ruse or a trick that Percy's trying to pull on her, but then she realizes that he has good intentions and agrees to go along with the plan, and she tells Percy that she won't fail, and Percy says, not failing would be good, which is a great response, and this is very much something I would say. I love doing that kind of thing. I was playing in a Central Park softball league game yesterday, and someone got a hit, and someone said, yeah, let's get more of those, and I said, yeah, getting more hits is a great idea. It's a smart strategy. So Annabeth is floored. She begins to tell Percy, that was so, and Grover interjects saying generous, and Annabeth, which I fell for this. I thought she was going to compliment Percy. She says insane because she doesn't trust Clarice.
Right.
I do find it funny that it feels like Percy has fully gotten over the Clarice beef, but Annabeth still holding on to it. Maybe she will come to eventually, but right now she's not letting that grudge go. And I can kind of get it, since Clarice did very recently blow stuff up twice. So I could see Clarice having some sort of situation where she goes, oh no, I left it in the security tray, or oh no, I left it in the seat back pocket. Things that I have both done exactly one time with my laptop. And now, if anyone ever travels with me in the airport, you will see me check my backpack 15 times before I get onto and leave the plane to make sure that my laptop is still in there, because I'm petrified of leaving it anywhere. Because especially now when my laptop contains all of my job, so it's a way worse situation.
Well, and Annabeth, in her defense, does have like years and years of built up animosity with Clarice. So I can imagine it's harder for her to let that go.
That makes way more sense. That's a very good point. Percy's known Clarice for a summer, and Annabeth has known Clarice for many years.
Right.
Now, Percy says it's her quest. She deserves a chance. And Tyson says, Percy is nice. And Annabeth says, Percy is too nice. I love this. Perfect banter. Narrator Percy says, quote, I couldn't help thinking that maybe, just maybe, she was a little impressed. I'd surprised her anyway, and that wasn't easy to do. And I think this is tremendous. I mean, especially as my heavily invested in Percabeth nature has become, this is just really good. I'm really stoked for this.
Yeah, this again is just another, like, I love all the banter, but also just the like layers there of maybe Percy's fatal flaw is that he is too nice, too trusting.
Yeah, I've been recently trying to think a bit more about his fatal flaw because it came up a couple of chapters ago, and him being too nice is a potential thought, but I'm not 100% sure because he did turn on Luke the second he knew Luke was evil, but we did just see him give Polyphemus the benefit of the doubt a couple of times, so that's definitely a front runner for fatal flaw, which I have not quite honed in on just yet.
Right.
Then we get an interesting line in the book where it says, come on, I told my friends, let's find another way home. That's when I turned and found a sword's point at my throat. And it was so happy and cute where he says, I told my friends. Just that turn of phrase I thought was really sweet. And then immediately with a sword, and I knew this had to be Luke's sword. So I felt happy because, I finally correctly guessed what a chapter was at the beginning. I have not had a great track record of chapter guesses. But also then I thought, oh no, Luke's back. He's got a sword at Percy's neck. Not ideal.
Right.
Now, if you thought a sword at Percy's neck was bad, what makes it way worse is Luke's opening line, which is, hey, cuz, welcome back to the States. Gross.
Yes, it's so reminiscent to me of like in Romeo and Juliet, how people in that play are constantly using cousin as a threat, particularly during moments of swordplay.
Yeah, that's a good pull. Good pull. Now, the bear twin bodyguards are also there. One grabs Annabeth and Grover by their collars. The other tries to grab Tyson, but Tyson just trucks them into a pile of luggage and then roars at Luke. Great. Yes.
Tyson
good.
Forever.
Correct choice. Then Luke calmly says, Percy, tell your giant to back down or I'll have Araeus bash your friends' heads together. Which, okay, touche, Luke. But the calmly nature of this is so villainous, and I feel like Luke is getting more and more villainous as the book goes on. The only way that the calmly would not be villainous is if we're going by Michael Gambon as Dumbledore in Goblet of Fire rules of calmly, which means screams in all caps. So if he screamed, Percy, tell your giant to back down or I'll have Araeus bash your friend's head together, that would have been a little different, but him saying it truly calmly is way more chilling as a villain.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that is such a well-trod in a good way sign that a villain is losing their attachment to their humanity a bit.
Yeah, that's a good point. Percy asks Luke what he wants. I wrote in my notes, just a hug. Luke needs a hug from his dad. And Luke then gestures towards the Princess Andromeda in the harbor and says, why, Percy, I want to extend my hospitality, of course. And now it was hard for me not to imagine Luke as just some hoity-toity British villain. This feels very Scar of him. Now I was imagining all of these quotes to be in a British pompous accent, because to say, why, Percy, I want to extend my hospitality, of course, like it just feels so different. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So they're forced aboard the ship and they are placed in front of the swimming pool and some fountains, and they are surrounded by a bunch of goons onlooking the scene. Luke then muses, which again is very fancy villain of him. And so the fleece, where is it? And it's just, he's become Lucius Malfoy in this moment to me. He's completely transformed.
Yes.
And honestly, like, I feel like this is the way that Lucius Malfoy asks for the prophecy in Order of the Phoenix. I feel like he goes, Harry, hand it over. So this just feels very different of Luke here. He's just becoming the comic bookiest of villains in this moment. And honestly, I love it for him. It's great.
Yeah.
And I apologize that I just keep quoting Luke, but all of these quotes are just so palpably...
They're so juicy, yeah.
Yes, they're just so juicily evil. He pokes Grover's fur with his sword. Grover protests. And then Luke says, sorry, old friend. Just give me the fleece, and I'll leave you to return to your, little nature quest.
Which is so galling of him. So audacious, I would say. He knows this is like a quest from the gods. And he went on his own little nature quest looking for an apple.
Yeah. Grover hits him with blahaha, which is great. As someone who uses bahaha when I actually laugh out loud at something, I think that is a great note from Grover. And then Grover continues, some old friend. Then in a, quote, dangerously calm voice, Luke says, maybe you didn't hear me. Where is the fleece? And each of those had an M dash in between the words. And that's how you know he means business.
Things are serious when you pull out the M dash.
Mm-hmm. And they're the big M dashes, the ones where Microsoft Word will autocorrect it if you hit space after, and my phone refuses to do it. And I hate it. Is there a way to do an actual M dash to force your phone to do it? Because when it's just a hyphen and not the longer M dash, it really rubs me the wrong way.
Well, do you have an iPhone?
I do. Oh, is it the thing where if you hold it down?
Yeah, you hold it down and then it will give you access to not only the M dash, but also the N dash, which is the lesser known, not as versatile cousin of the M dash.
Is that the one that's just a dot? I'm pulling on my phone right now and seeing what it looks like.
It's like a length in between the hyphen and the M dash. And it's supposed to be used to show like ranges of dates or numbers.
Oh, like if you did 8 to 10 sheep?
Or like 1989 to 2005.
Wow. You have changed my life. I never noticed that there were 3, because there's the big long M dash, which is certainly what Luke used here. And then there's the hyphen, and then the one in between, the N dash. Wow. And then there's also the dot, which I do love in tweets to make a bulleted list. Wow. Thank you. So this is huge. If
I can do one thing, it's spread the functionality of the M dash.
Changer. Amazing. We can shut the whole podcast down now. We've peaked.
Yeah. All of our goals are met.
So Percy says that the fleece is not here, and he tells Luke that he messed up. And as the narrator, Percy admits, I probably shouldn't have said anything. But he couldn't resist the urge to shove it in Luke's face. And honestly, I get it. And I especially get it for a 13-year-old. How can you pass up this opportunity?
Yeah, this is kind of his little Clarice moment.
Yeah. So we finally get a non-calm Luke. His face turns red and he says, you're lying. You couldn't have ... Clarice? And Luke just cannot believe that Percy would trust her. And then he orders Agrius to go below deck and fetch him his steed so that he can fly to the Miami airport. And I got to give a shout out to the Miami airport because it is the Miami International Airport, meaning that the acronym is MIA, which actually fits the city's acronym of MIA. And that's just top notch when you can make that acronym work.
Good job, Miami.
Phenomenal stuff for Miami.
Have cause to compliment Florida. So
yes, there is one person on the subreddit who always comments on the episode. And if I make fun of Florida, they rate it 0 out of 10. And if I don't make fun of Florida, they give it 10 out of 10. So I can only assume that this will be a 20 out of 10 since I've actively given praise to Florida, a rare instance.
That's such a fascinating quirk to have.
I love it. I look forward to it every single week. So Agrius doesn't want to get the steed, which is weird. Maybe it has to do with the steed itself. Maybe Luke has a dangerous, evil Pegasus or something. I don't know. But Agrius being concerned about this did not make me feel very happy. I was very worried as well. And Luke says that if Agrius doesn't get it, he will be fed to the Draken, and that is great motivation for Agrius to go. Luke then paces in front of the swimming pool angrily, cursing in ancient Greek and clenching his fists so tightly that his knuckles turn white. This is glorious. I'm really enjoying seeing Luke not on top of the game here.
Yes, absolutely. It's so fun to watch this kind of facade of being an experienced, mature villain just fall away. And it's like, oh, right, you are also a teenager.
Yeah, I've been a villain for 3/4 of a book. Okay, Luke. Or I guess the whole book. A book and 3/4.
Yeah.
Which is in no way was a villain in the book. Now, this makes the gang of goons uneasy because they've never seen Luke so out of sorts before. And this gives Percy the idea to get Luke talking so that everyone can hear how truly unhinged his plans are. So Percy says, you've been toying with us all along. You wanted us to bring you the fleece and save you the trouble of getting it. I think I did predict this a million years ago, which I feel great about in terms of prediction-wise, but it also felt kind of obvious. And it also is a children's book. And I also am 30 years old. So I can't take too many victory laps here. Luke says, of course, you idiot, and you've messed everything up, which is great. I really like that response from Luke. But Percy, and I didn't see this coming, and I think it's such a good move. He throws a drachma at Luke and yells, traitor! And then I thought, oh, is he going to pray to a god so that they can hear what's going on? And that's exactly what he does. Luke dodges the drachma, and then Percy does a silent prayer, and he thinks, well, I hope this works, which I think is very fun. We have some instances of Percy just kind of thinking on his feet and then just hoping, well, maybe my water powers can do this. I don't know. So this is a similar thing of maybe you can silently pray for an iris message. And we find out that you can. Percy just continues to outdo himself. He says, you tricked all of us, even Dionysus at Camp Half-Blood, which is just a great way to call for the iris message in a way that doesn't make it super apparent. The fountain begins to shimmer, but Percy knows that the attention's gotta stay on him, so he uncaps Riptide so that no one looks at the fountain. And Luke kind of scoffs at Percy, taking out the sword, saying it's not gonna matter, it's of no use. Percy then asks who poisoned the tree, and Luke admits that he did it, which is great. And then he says that he used elder python venom from the depths of Tartarus. And I do appreciate that if something ever comes from Tartarus or is in Tartarus, it's always the depths of Tartarus. There's no other way to describe it.
We're not getting anything at the entrance.
Yes, the depths only. Percy, even smarter, now starts to clear Chiron's name. He says Chiron had nothing to do with it. And Luke goes, ha! You know he would never do that. The old fool wouldn't have the guts. And Percy disagrees that screwing over your friends is something that takes guts. He dispels this notion, which I think is good.
Yeah, it's so devastating that Luke has done this to Talia specifically because, while I obviously don't agree with Luke's choices to hurt Percy, Talia was one of the most important. They tried to get to Camp Half-Blood together. It's just another layer of clarity as to how far Luke has fallen. And it's so sad.
Yeah, you make a really good point there, because in my previous guess where I thought Luke was lying about using the coffin to bring Kronos back, I thought he was using it to bring Thalia back from the tree, and the poison was doing something where it was sucking the life force out of her tree and into the coffin. I don't know if that's the case given what is about to happen in a couple sentences, but I guess it's because I gave Luke the benefit of the doubt of he wouldn't stoop so low as to actively hurt Thalia for no good reason aside from I want to mess with Camp Half-Blood. I think I gave him too much credit. I think you're right. He has truly sunk so low to hurt his best friend, or at least one of his closest friends.
Yeah.
And that really paints the picture of how far he has fallen from where he was previously.
Right.
Luke goes on to say, you don't know the half of it. You don't know the half of what's going on. And he admits that he was going to let Percy keep the fleece once he was done with it. And that gives Percy some pause. So I thought, okay, maybe the fleece was going to be used to heal whoever comes out of the coffin, kind of like they used it to heal Annabeth, and then they wouldn't need it anymore. And that is exactly what Percy says on the next sentence. Percy says, oh, you're going to use it to heal Kronos. And Luke agrees. And I wrote my notes, oh no, my big prediction. Luke says, yes, the fleece's magic would have sped his mending process tenfold, but you haven't stopped us, Percy. You only slowed us down a little. And then Percy, really to drive it home, says, and so you poisoned the tree, you betrayed Thalia, you set us up, all to help Kronos destroy the gods. And I like that Luke doesn't get what's going on, but is frustrated by Percy's questioning here, because he replies, you know that, why do you keep asking me?
Right. It feels so very supervillain at this point, where it's like, you know, for however smart you're supposed to be, you're not picking up on some pretty obvious things, my guy.
Exactly. And it really reminded me of Elle Woods in Legally Blonde,
Yes!
really taking Linda Cardellini's character, really just walking it through. You had the perm, you took a shower, just really making her admit it. It was so perfectly movie lawyery, movie witness interrogation scene, whatever, cross-examination, whatever it is. It felt very much like that, just to make sure. I wanted to be very clear that you're admitting to all of these things so that we have it in writing. I imagine that there is some sort of stenographer on the other end of this conversation taking note of everything that Luke is saying. And in response to Luke asking why you're doing this, Percy says, because I want everyone in the audience to hear you. And Luke goes, what audience, with the what in italics? And he turns around and he sees what's happening. There is an iris messaging version of Mr. D, Tantalus, and the whole camp. And then Dionysus, who I thought it was very interesting that he was referred to in both instances as Dionysus and not Mr. D. I feel like I would have to go back and see if the narrator refers to him as Dionysus in all instances, or do they just call him Mr. D? Because they call him Mr. D in quotes, but when he's the narrator, it's Dionysus. It's just an interesting little difference I picked up on here.
I've always felt like it was like in moments where they're leaning on the fact that like he is a god as opposed to their camp counselor.
Got it.
That those are the moments when they call him Dionysus, but I'd have to go back and check too.
I think that does make sense though, because he did call on Iris to message Dionysus, the god.
Right.
So to
she probably
refer to him
have
as
him
such.
in her phone as Mr. D.
Yeah, she hasn't updated the nickname section of her contacts page where he shows up as Mr. D. And then she didn't set a calendar reminder for, what was it, 100 years or whatever it was to change it back. Now, Dionysus / Mr. D here says, well, some unplanned dining entertainment, because in all the background you could see that he and the campers were at dinner. A great note. Percy checks to make sure that Mr. D heard all of this and that he knows it's not Chiron's fault. And Mr. D confirms and then sighs and agrees that it's not Chiron's fault. Tantalus, of course, posits that this could all be a trick and it's not a real Iris message, but Mr. D dispels this thought and says that he's going to reinstate Chiron, and though he is sad, he does look forward to playing pinochle with him again, which I thought was a phenomenal callback. I forgot about playing pinochle with a horse. What a fun time.
Yes.
Now, Tantalus this whole time was trying to catch a cheeseburger, classic Tantalus, and he is able to grab his burger, which confused me because isn't that curse just tied to his I ate my kids thing? I didn't think it was linked with him being at Camp Half-Blood.
Yeah, I don't know. I wonder if it's like intensified or maybe modified, like how Mr. D has to drink Diet Coke all the time instead of wine or anything else. I don't know. I'd have to like look back. I wish I'd paid more attention to that.
It's something I need to look back at as well, because maybe it wasn't actually ever said that this was his curse outside of Camp Half-Blood. I just inferred that the punishment of you ate your children was you don't get to eat food anymore. So maybe he was just sent to the worst parts of Tartarus, and then this was a separate thing of, okay, while you're back in mortal realm / on Earth, this is your new thing that makes your life bad. So maybe it was just a Camp Half-Blood thing and I missed it, but he is able to grab his cheeseburger and then perfectly, whether it was intentional or not, it's truly a hilarious move by Mr. D, because Mr. D says, oh, well, we don't need you anymore, and just sends him back to Tartarus, and Tantalus is not able to eat the cheeseburger, and it falls back down on the plate. Chef's kiss. Perfection. You'll love to see it.
Yes, absolutely.
The campers erupt in cheers. Luke bellows with rage, and he slashes his sword through the iris message, which causes it to dissolve. And I could only imagine that it makes the AOL Instant Messenger door close noise when you log off. But it's too late. The deed is done. Percy's feeling good until Luke shoots him a murderous look. And he says, quote, Kronos was right, Percy. You're an unreliable weapon. You need to be replaced. And then I realized, oh, my incorrect prediction is now semi-correct, because now Luke for sure wants to get Thalia back, because to say the weapon makes it pretty clear, since we've discussed in the past, the weapon could have been Thalia, but she's a tree. So I feel like in a weird way, I got the right answer, but my work wasn't right. It's like in my engineering classes where I would get the right answer, but all of my work was incorrect. I just happened to land upon the same thing that happened to be the answer.
On a multiple choice, you'd be in the clear, but on a long form answer, no credit.
Yeah. And it was truly a shame. I felt like over my engineering career, my teachers, rightfully so, transitioned from just getting the answer to the answer basically doesn't mean anything, which sometimes was nice. If you did everything right, but you just got the wrong answer, they'd be like, -1 point. You just forgot to do one square root right or whatever. But anytime it was like this, where you got the right answer by the wrong means, you go, but come on, I got it.
Right.
So then this chapter concludes. Narrator Percy says, I wasn't sure what he meant, but I didn't have time to think about it. One of his men blew a brass whistle, and the deck doors flew open. A dozen more warriors poured out, making a circle around us, the brass tips of their spear bristling. Luke smiled at me, quote, you'll never leave this boat alive. And that's the end of this chapter. And that's the end of this episode of The Newest Olympian.
That's so terrifying. Especially, I feel like it's such an up and down moment for Percy, because I so love that we have the contrast of what his possible fatal flaw might be with being too willing to give people the benefit of the doubt, or too trusting, too kind, blowing up in their face with Polyphemus, but then really paying off with Clarice. But then now we're right back into he let his guard down because he thought he had Luke with the iris message, and here we are.
Yeah, maybe his fatal flaw is not being able to resist talking smack when he thinks he's got somebody he got.
Yes.
I would hope it all works out. I would hope that, again, don't know how airports worked in 2006, 2007, but if it's anything like some of the run-ins I've had where people, the boarding door is closed, sir, we can't let you in. We can't open a door we closed 5 seconds ago. That would be great if Luke got hung up in TSA. Like he misses the flight because he's got metal buckles on his shoes or whatever, or he didn't empty his water bottle. If that's the reason he doesn't catch Clarice in time, that would be pretty good.
Yeah, everyone's still carrying their swords.
Yeah, right. Sir? I know this isn't on the you can't bring list, but it's pretty obvious no swords. Anyway, this has been a blast. Ashlee, thank you so much for coming aboard and talking about your work and these 2 chapters. What a fun time. If people want to find you doing stuff, or if they want to read the book you wrote, that's super cool. Where can they find you doing stuff?
Yeah, so you can find me on Twitter at ALNL, and on Instagram and TikTok at Ashlee Lauren Nicole, ASHLEE LAURYN NICHOLE. And the book, Frances Discovers Possible, is available to buy at purchasepossible.com.
Amazing. I also, we reminisced earlier before recording about how we both have the people spelling our names wrong all of the time similarity. But your middle name being Lauren with a Y. Oh.
Yeah.
Oh. Oh, no.
Yeah, my mom truly gave me the most 1991 name of all time. But then she spelled all three of my names just slightly differently than the norm. So
yeah, the one thing I have going for me is that Michael and Mike I spell regularly, but people love to forget the C in Schubert, even when they send emails to my email that has my name in the email.
If only people could check the reference points available to them.
Do people not proofread their emails 38 times before sending? Because that's what I do.
Same.
You can bet every email I sent you, Ashlee, I proofread 50 times to make sure. Did I have too many exclamation points? Did I use this word too often? I said multiple things were great. I got to find synonyms. That's good. That's solid. That sounds nice.
Oh, absolute same, especially with exclamation points, because often my first draft will very much type as I talk, and I'm pretty enthusiastic most of the time. So I'll have to go back and be like, okay, there are 5 sentences, so I should have no more than 2 exclamation points.
Yep. It's really a ranking of which sentence deserves it.
Right.
If I say no worries with a period, does it sound like I don't mean it? Because I truly do mean no worries.
Right. And then if all else fails, I just use an M dash.
Yeah, I mean, you've unlocked so many things for me now. Anyway, Ashlee, thank you so much for joining. Listeners, thanks for listening. And until we discuss what's happening next, how they resolve getting attacked by everyone on the ship, I'll see you later. Hey, thanks so much for listening to this episode of The Newest Olympian. This podcast is created, hosted, and produced by me, Mike Schubert. I also run the social media and the website. Our editor is Sherry Glow. The music is by Bettina Campamanes and Brandon Grugel, and the art is by Jessica E. Boyd. If you love the show, you cannot get enough of the show, you need some more, you can go to thenewestolympian.com/Patreon, and you can get access to more bonus episodes, monthly live streams, the Discord, so much fun stuff, all at thenewestolympian.com/Patreon. And speaking of the Patreon, I want to give a shout out to our producer level patrons: Lotta Bartova, Kelsey Gillespie, The Damn Steam Nuggets, Emma Cooey, Vicky Garcia, Ellie Housekovchova, Veronica Bartova, Haley Hastings, Robin Garcia, Frida Vikstrom, Megan Moon, Tough Bayfong, Moo Productions, Don't Call Me Nymphadora, Olivia Y, Craig McRoberts, Taylor Payne, Giselle Salvador, Minka Dreesen, Can't-I Seaweed Brain, Matt Barger, Peter Johnson the Twin, Sabrina Balsiger, Boney Pony, Getting Stoned with Smelly Gabe, Heather McMillan, Casey Canales, Polly Burridge, Nikki Harris, Tatiana Schmidt, Sandra Rose, Bridget Lowry, Josh Sayer, Percy Blue, Josh Wilkie, Abby Ryan, Shannon Ivanez Aguilar, Wise Girl, Alpacas Are Hope, Milo TZ, Roxas 1912, Rafaela, Ashton Gabrielson, Cara Marin, Colby, Marco Redhouse, Falcon, Joey James, Christopher William Boucher, Justin Lux, Caden Max, Sam Ruby, Carly Allen, Riley Kiedis, Mary Kelly, Audra McKenzie, Mrs. O'Leary, Marina Foose, Aaron Wood, Tyler Hendricks, Molly Snyder, Rodith Kalna, and Milo Kim. Now, if you want to support the show, but in a non-monetary way, first you could follow us on social media. We're at Newest Olympian on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. We also have a subreddit, reddit.com/r/thenewest-olympian. And then you could talk about us on social media. That really helps. Word of mouth is really huge. Or you could leave a rating and review on whatever podcast app you're using. So Apple Podcasts or Spotify let you rate. If you want to rate us, leave a nice review. That's really nice. But honestly, the biggest thing, word of mouth. If you think of someone that would love the show, reach out to them directly and say, hey, there's this podcast, there's this guy, he's reading the Percy Jackson books for the very first time. I think you're going to like it. Here's a link to it. That is huge. All of these things help, and I'm appreciative to all of you who have done it or who will do it in the future. But I'm just so thankful you listened to this episode, and I hope you tune into our next episode where we talk about all of Chapter 18 and Chapter 19 up until the point in which the chariot race begins with my wife, Kelly Schubert. It's going to be the penultimate episode of book stuff for TNO. Super stoked. Check it out. But until then, I'll see you later. Hey everyone, how's it going? It's me, ASMR Mike. So what I'm going to do for this ASMR segment is I weirdly find the tapping noise that the iPhone does when you text. I find it to be very soothing, but not functional. Like when I actually use it, when I've got headphones in and stuff, I don't necessarily like it, but I feel like it has a nice sound to it. So I'm just going to type out words and then have the noise go. So let's go with, hello, it's me, ASMR Mike, and I am here typing on my phone and also whispering into a microphone while I do it. I hope this creates interesting audio, but who's to say, because I use a software that eliminates noise. So will these text noises count? Question mark. Only one way